A single line of shell script. That is the entire installation path for Meta's new coding agent. A curl command piped to a shell on Mac OS or Linux. No IDE, no extension marketplace, no waitlist form, at least not for everyone. Meta has launched Muse Code, a terminal-first coding agent built on a model the company calls Muse Spark 1.2. It is, according to Meta's own framing, in early beta. That word matters, and we'll come back to it. But the more consequential number isn't in the install script. It's on the pricing page. $1.25 per million input tokens, $4.25 per million output. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what the last 2 years did to developer tooling. In February 2025, Anthropic shipped Claude Code, an agent that lives in your terminal, reads your repository, and edits files directly. OpenAI followed with Codex CLI in April. Google shipped Gemini CLI in June. Meanwhile, Cursor, built by the startup Anysphere, took the opposite path. Fork Visual Studio Code, put the model inside the editor and let developers stay in a graphical environment. 2 philosophies. The terminal agent treats your codebase as the interface. The IDE agent treats your cursor position as the interface. Meta has now placed its bet firmly on the terminal. Strip away the marketing and Muse Code describes a familiar loop with 3 stages. First, planning. The agent surveys a repository, builds a working map of the relevant files, and proposes a sequence of changes before touching anything. On large code bases, this is the hard part. Not writing code, but knowing which 2,000 lines out of 2 million are actually in scope. Second, writing. It produces diffs, not blobs. Targeted edits across multiple files in a single pass. Third, validation. It runs your tests, reads the failures, and iterates. None of that is novel. Claude Code has done it for over a year. The question is whether Meta's implementation holds up under real repository pressure. Muse Spark 1.2 is the engine, and it is positioned specifically for code generation and debugging rather than as a general-purpose frontier model. That distinction is strategic. Meta spent years shipping Llama as open weights, competing on generality and license terms. A named, versioned, code-specialized model served through a paid API is a different business entirely. What we can say with confidence is limited. Meta's published claims about Muse Spark 1.2's coding and debugging performance have not, at the time of this recording, been independently reproduced by third-party evaluators. Benchmark numbers from vendors are marketing artifacts until someone else runs them. Treat them accordingly. The honest comparison with Claude Code comes down to maturity versus economics. Claude Code has the deeper track record. It has been hardened against months of real-world use, has a mature permissions model for what the agent may touch, and has an ecosystem of hooks and integrations built around it. Developers who have run large refactors through it report a level of reliability that early beta tools rarely match. Muse Code arrives with none of that history. What it arrives with is a substantially cheaper token bill, and in agentic coding, token consumption is not incidental. An agent that reads a repository, plans, edits, and reruns tests burns tokens continuously. Cost compounds. Cursor is a different animal, and comparing it to Muse Code is comparing a product to a primitive. Cursor sells an integrated experience, autocomplete, inline chat, codebase indexing, all wrapped in a familiar editor and billed largely as a subscription. It abstracts the model away. Many Cursor users could not tell you which vendor answered their last request. Muse Code makes the opposite trade. It gives you the raw agent in the shell, scriptable and pipeable, billed by the token. For developers running agents inside CI pipelines or automated workflows, that transparency is the feature. For developers who want a polished editor, it is friction. Different tools, genuinely different users. Here is the concrete builder angle. At $1.25 per million input tokens and $4.25 per million output, Meta is undercutting the established mid-tier on the output side, which is precisely where agentic coding workloads are expensive. Agents don't just read, they generate, revise, and regenerate. Anthropic's Sonnet tier has listed at $3 input and $15 output. OpenAI's flagship has listed input at $1.25 with output substantially higher than Meta's figure. Prices change. Verify before you budget. The strategic point survives the arithmetic. Until now, teams building coding infrastructure had effectively two credible vendors. Meta is attempting to become a third. Context matters here. Meta spent 2025 in visible turbulence around its AI organization, a reorganization into what it branded Meta Superintelligence Labs, aggressive recruiting, a $14 billion stake in Scale AI, and a series of senior departures widely reported through the second half of the year. A paid code-specialized API represents something Meta's AI division has largely lacked: direct revenue and a defensible product wedge that doesn't depend on winning the general-purpose frontier race. Coding is the most commercially proven application of large language models. It has measurable outputs, budget-holding buyers, and customers who switch vendors over price. It is a rational place to attack. 4 things will determine whether this becomes real infrastructure or a footnote. Rate limits and availability during beta. Cheap tokens you cannot reliably access are not cheap. Independent benchmark reproduction of Muse Spark 1.2's coding claims by evaluators with no commercial stake. Platform coverage, given that macOS and Linux only leaves a significant share of enterprise developers out. And enterprise terms, data handling, retention, and whether Meta's history makes procurement teams hesitate. The install command is one line. The evaluation takes considerably longer. For now, what exists is a credible third option in a market that badly needed one, shipped early, priced aggressively, and entirely unproven.